Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Lisa Schots. I'm a PhD student and resident in dermatology from the Ghent University Hospital in the group of Professor Jo Lambert, the PsoGhent team. And I will talk today about the real-world clinical data from our own psoriasis dedicated consultations. And our study objects were to report on the IL-17 effectiveness and drug survival, report on treatment modifications, and also describe the utility of the serum biologic drug concentrations in clinical decision-making. So first, our cohort. It consisted of 111 patients, counting for 134 treatment courses. We can see among all courses that almost half of the patients had been treated with secukinumab, 1/3 with ixekizumab, and almost 15% with pozolimab. Considering the biological experience, we see that more than half of the ixekizumab and secukinumab treated patients were biologic naive, but that pozolimab was prescribed in patients who already had prior biological experience. So the first objective, here I summarized the most important data about our effectiveness results. So in summary, almost all our patients and 80% of the patients reached near complete skin clearance or complete skin clearance during maintenance. Then about the onset of action, pozolimab was the fastest among all interleukin-17 blockers in our cohort. We also saw that bio-naive patients had a faster response compared to the biologic experienced patients. And considering the stable remission, we saw that more than half of the patients had a stable remission during the whole follow-up time without the difference between the three IL-17 blockers. And we also saw that patients who had shown at least once near complete or full complete skin clearance also showed were more likely to show a stable remission during follow-up. And lastly, also bio-naive patients were more likely to show stable remission. And also the patient who had stable remission also showed a faster response in the beginning. We also did drug survival analysis, and here we see that ixekizumab tended to have the highest drug survival, but was closely followed by secukinumab in the short term. When we pulled all our courses together, we saw that biologic naive patients had a higher drug survival compared to the biologic experienced ones. And reasons for IL-17 discontinuation were mostly insufficient efficacy and, in a lesser extent, safety issues. Second objective, what about the treatment modifications in our cohort? So first, modifications were mostly performed in the patients who had insufficient response or safety issues, but also we did modifications in the excellent responders. The modifications were mostly switched to another biologic, but also dose escalation and dose de-escalation. When looking to the interleukin-17 blockers separately, we saw that the patterns differed among the three blockers, and we see that the modifications were at least performed in the ixekizumab-treated courses. We also see that switch was, again, the most performed modification, and dose escalation was mostly performed in secukinumab-treated patients. Then we come to our last objective. What about the utility of the biologic drug levels in these patients? So in a subcohort of 20 patients treated with or secukinumab or ixekizumab, blood was drawn and before, during, or after the treatment modification. So we used then the drug levels to see whether we have made a good clinical decision, so post hoc, so after the clinical decision. And so, if necessary, we could modify the treatment if necessary. So here I put some examples of these cases, but I will not go in detail because of time limitation. But in summary, we had some patients where we performed dose escalation, and within the patients that this was successful, these patients had all low drug levels. We also had dose escalated patients that were unsuccessful, and all these patients have either low, adequate, or high levels. Most of these unsuccessful dose-escalated patients were switched to another biologic, and most of them successful. And lastly, we also performed dose de-escalation in some patients. In one patient, dose de-escalation was successful, and he also had high levels. In the other patient, dose de-escalation was unsuccessful, and this patient apparently had low levels. So in summary, in 85% of this subcohort, the clinical decision was in accordance with the measured drug levels, meaning that in 15%, if the drug levels were known beforehand, we would have made another clinical decision. So this approach is actually a first step to therapeutic drug monitoring of biologics, or TDM. So I'd like to conclude my talk or these results by stating that the IL-17 inhibitors were very effective drugs in our psoriasis cohort, with ixekizumab as a leading biologic. In our cohort, prior bio-experience seemed to have impact on the effectiveness and drug survival. Treatment modifications were mostly performed in insufficient responders, primarily via switch, but also dose escalation, and least frequently in ixekizumab-treated patients. And lastly, we believe that the trough levels or the drug levels might be a helpful tool in clinical decision-making, but before we can fully implement this approach, there is a need for protocol optimization and standardization of our algorithms. So I'd like to thank, of course, my team members of the PsoGen team, IPC, for inviting me, and you, the audience, for your attention.
So thank you very much, Lisa, for this nice presentation. Are there any questions? If so, please come to the front. Yeah, Joel?
This is a really nice presentation and really interesting data. You know, in the clinical trials, people are really unlikely to stop IL-17 inhibitors due to side effects. And it seems like you had a number of patients stopping due to adverse events. Could you give us a sense of what the adverse events were, and are you convinced they were truly related to the biologic, or was it just coincidental?
No, so we had some report of adverse events in our cohort, but the real reasons for discontinuation because of the safety issues were paradoxal hidradenitis, eczema, palmoplantar psoriasis, but we also had one patient with pneumonia and a Crohn's disease exacerbation, and also intolerable arthralgia of unknown origin. And these were the reasons to stop.
I mean, that's a really interesting observation. It's pretty high prevalence of those things. So what percent of the patients stopped the drug because of the side effects? Do you remember?
I think it's my site. It's 2.3%, 3.2%.
Oh, it's
yeah.
small. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.